Welcome into Skol Purple Podcast episode number 11. And we start off with quite a bit of breaking news. I mean, first of all, Patrick Peterson, that's the most noteworthy thing for Viking fans coming back. But man, Bruce Arians is retiring. And, he's at that age, and he actually retired once already. But man, gentlemen, what were your thoughts on that when that broke here just a few moments ago? Let's start with Kevin. I got to do my moderating here.
All right. Surprised, caught off guard, mainly the timing of it. Normally that'd be a decision made earlier. So, I wonder if there's any other, like he's had some health issues in the past or whatever. So concerned about that. But I also know that he wants to kind of handpick his successor, and he's advocated for Bowles to take over for a long time. So I don't know. I'm guessing we'll learn more about it, the why, and the timing.
Yeah,
unless that's already broken too.
yeah, maybe it is by the time people maybe watch this later too. It could be, but yeah, Chandler, what do you think of Mr. Arians stepping down at this time? I know there's been lots of rumors with his name in it the last little while too, with Antonio Brown and that whole saga as well. But what are the emotions? What are the feelings of Bruce Arians stepping down? I know it's a huge Vikings move.
I was
right
prepping for this show, and then I just got the little banner down on my phone, and I'm like, wait, what a sec. Wait, what? And then I scrolled down, and I had to make sure it was real. I think it was a Bleacher Report update. But, yeah, very odd timing. Like Kevin said, you would maybe think he would make this decision a little bit sooner, so close to draft time. We are a month out, but shocking, especially since we were talking that Tom Brady decides to come back, and now all of a sudden he's just like, nope, well, see you later. I'm out of here. So very, very shocking. I think Todd Bowles will do great, but I would think he would want another run with Tom Brady. So it's wild. The craziest NFL offseason continues. Why would it stop now, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, like I was just telling you guys before, I figured that kind of a move would have happened only if Tom Brady retired and didn't come back. But it's
he's
happened.
Moving to the front office, I guess.
Yes, that's true. He's retiring from coaching, but staying in the front office. And good for Todd Bowles, though, man. He deserves that job. I'm glad that he was able to pick his successor, and there's a lot of other good black coaching candidates, get my alliteration correct here, that just haven't gotten jobs or even interviews, or when they do get interviews, it's not serious consideration for the jobs. So it's good to see Todd Bowles get that job. And
very healthy situation for him.
Yeah, you can't ask for much of a better situation to walk right into. So, well, this is a Vikings podcast, so I suppose we should go ahead and move on. We spent the first almost 5 minutes talking about that, but that's all right. Just came across and was fresh in our minds. And also fresh in our minds is Patrick Peterson returning to the Vikings. And Chandler, let's start with you. Patrick Peterson back in purple for another year. What do you think?
I think it was a move that needed to be done for the Vikings. They're very thin at that position. They needed another outside cornerback. I don't know if you can just throw the reins to Cam Dantzler. But like Patrick Peterson said, that he fully expects them to, I think, draft a cornerback with that 12th pick. And I think that's what's ultimately going to end up happening. I think it's good for the locker room. It's just interesting to see this new regime and the ownership pretty much say it's full goal. Let's run it back and see if new coaching can really put us over the hump and get us those extra wins that maybe we would have won last year without with this regime. So it's interesting though. I think a lot of people are expecting not a blow up, but a lot more retooling. For the most part, they're bringing about everyone back besides a couple people. But I think this was someone that should have been back in the first place. I think he's good for the locker room, and he's definitely. I think he's got some good football left in him. So I like the move. I think it was a necessary move. It's just we'll see how this pans out in the long run. Really, we will. Will he be a scheme fit and Ed Donatel's scheme? Like there's a lot of questions that I feel like need to be answered yet too.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, this is just a 2022 move. Like maybe they could bring him back another year after this, but this is a win now, try and help the secondary in 2022 move. So that doesn't give me much hope beyond this year for the Vikings cornerback room, but it does help things in the short term in 2022. And if you do draft somebody, then it gives you the ability to give them a mentor like Patrick Peterson to bring them up for a year as well. But Kevin, what do you think of the move? I think it was a move that made sense for the Vikings. It was just a matter of if Patrick Peterson was going to get a better deal somewhere else, and maybe he did, but in the end, he just wanted to be familiar, be in a place that's familiar to him, and ended up staying with the Vikings.
Yeah, I think the 1 year, $4 million, great team friendly deal. They absolutely needed, a proven, established outside corner, and a veteran presence with that group. And he comes back knowing full well they're going to draft a guy very high, and he'll be mentoring that guy. And I think it's a great move. And if he plays well, and he could be on another 1 year. He said he wants to play 3 more years. So if he kind of bounces back and stays healthy and plays even better, um, he could have a better pass rush in front of him than he had last year too. So
Yeah, yeah, with Zadarius Smith and then a healthy, we hope both of them are healthy. Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter coming back. I mean, that's only going to help the secondary in 2022. So the question then becomes, of course, we added Chandon Sullivan last week as well, and then of course Nate Hairston, the real big cornerback signing right there. But we signed him as well. What are your vibes going into the draft? Obviously, we'll take a look at the mock draft here in a moment, but what are you guys feeling? Do you think that it's still cornerback going to be taken in the first round, or do you feel like the Vikings are going to go best player available? What do you think there, Kevin?
well, I think getting Peterson back gives them the freedom to go best player. Now, the best player could very likely be a cornerback, so that is win-win. But if somebody else slides, or things change between now and then, pro day workouts, injuries, whatnot. I think that's one of the big reasons they needed to do that. They needed to be in a position where they don't have to reach for a specific spot. So I think really smart, very necessary move.
Where do you think that leaves them there, Chandler, for the draft?
I agree with Kevin. I think it gives them that flexibility of being able to take that best player available. And like Kevin said, it easily could be a cornerback being the best player available at number 12. But this gives them the options to maybe look at different positions that they might not have, I don't know, necessarily had higher on their board. I'm always a firm believer, first round, you take the best player available no matter what. And the signing like this does give them that ability. So we'll see when we got a long ways to go. Who knows? This is all going to be new again with Kwesi at the helm. We're so used to Trader Rick. So who knows what we're going to be doing here? Are we going to be aggressive and try and move up if there's a guy there? Are we going to move back and gather some more picks? I'm excited because it's going to be new. It's going to be something we're not used to. But I'm fully aware. I'm fully prepared for them to take a cornerback early, either with their first pick or if they trade back and if they do it in their second round. I think a cornerback will still be a necessary pick there. But again, this gives them the flexibility of doing something different.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about Kyle Hamilton, running slow 40 times. And, you know, if they're smart, they look at the tape and you know, they see what he looks like on the field. And, you know, he ran a 4.59 at the combine, and that's like Harrison Smith level fast. What if he's there at 12?
Oh, I would be running to the podium. I swear, if
Yeah,
he's there at 12 and they don't
you
take him,
know, Harrison Smith's restructure doesn't really ensure anything beyond this year. So
Now here's a conundrum for you right now. Let's say Kyle Hamilton is there. Let's say Sauce Gardner drops down to the 12 spot. And let's say Kayvon Thibodeau drops to that 12 spot. Then it just really does come down to best player available, really. And I would say Hamilton's probably the best player available based on what I've seen, at least for big boards. But it just kind of depends. Some people maybe would have Thibodeau above Hamilton. So
yeah, I would as a player, but I haven't sat down and talked to the guy and like looked him in the eye and like how much of a, you know, grinder is he going to be versus diva celebrity? I don't know. And, you know, I'm not saying one way or the other, but that's the concern to me with him. And I mean, there's a few holes in his game, you know, a little stiffness and stuff, but man, he's a phenomenal impact guy at a position that affects the game, you know, and he's on the field every play and he can disrupt on every play. So that would be a conundrum, a good conundrum.
yeah, right. Exactly. A good conundrum for sure.
again, how many trade offers are they going to be getting with all three
Exactly.
of those guys there? And you can just
right.
stockpile and you can move down a couple picks and have your pick of the litter again with the there's so many different options that the Vikings could go if that would be the case. But I personally think they would have to take Kyle Hamilton. Watching a few Notre Dame games, I feel like that guy's just all over the place. Let him run slow for all he wants. I would love to have him at 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if he ran a 4.59 and you watched his time at the combine, I don't know where he was going, but it was the worst straight line run I've ever seen. So, I don't care. Like, he doesn't have any problem on the field getting from point A to point B. And then, you know, I don't know, these pro day workouts, you don't know the conditions or whatever. And then, you know, a guy's training for the combine and, you know, it kind of culminates there. I don't know how you maintain that training intensity to run drills. Like, that's why do them at the
That's
combine.
why I just talk
get
about
them
it.
done, and you'll never have to run a 40 again.
Well, I feel like if you have those three guys, you're either choosing Kayvon, who allegedly the rumors I've heard or read is that we don't know how much he loves the game of football or whatnot. You know, he's all about the money, you know, which good for him. This is what you get paid for. You are able to make your money. I have no issue with that. Then you got Kyle Hamilton, who is apparently slower molasses. And then you got Sauce Gardner, who doesn't play anyone besides, you know, the whatever conference, the American conference that they're in. So competition. So which one of those three factors are you going to play in the most?
Yeah.
I feel like too.
Yeah.
But he was doing pretty well in the game against Alabama, right?
That is true. From what I've watched and remember, I mean,
Yeah.
New Year's Eve games, man, those get past
Those
me.
New Year's 6 games, yeah.
He's probably the cleanest of those three prospects right now. Like, there's no checks again. You know, he's turning in all his numbers. They're good. He's smooth. He was productive. You know.
Now, I guess from your perspective, do you think there maybe is a quickness to Kyle Hamilton's game that doesn't show up in the 40-yard dash?
Yeah, I think it's his trigger, like his reaction time. Like, I think his anticipation. You know,
So kind of like Harry in a way.
Yeah, and I mean that's just huge. Like, you know, he can, you know, with his strides and his quick trigger, you know, he can be 2 steps ahead of the action before a guy with sub 4.4 speed is even moving in the right direction. So
yeah,
you know, and then his length is just rare. So I mean, I don't know, safeties have become a big deal, and most defensive coordinators want a safety that can move around and do all kinds of things like Harrison Smith does. And this guy is like that 2.0, but possibly even better. So,
Yeah.
you know, like Chandler said, it'd be hard not to just sprint to the podium and
Yeah.
turn in the card on him. So,
Right. And I don't know what you guys think about Cam Bynum, but I thought he was good in his time that he played last year, but I don't think he played enough to say, okay, that's my number one strong safety or free safety, whichever you want to classify him as. But I still would like to see more depth at safety, which supposedly the Vikings are looking at safety depth right now in free agency, but you would have to think they're going to be at least discussing drafting a safety at some point in the
yeah.
NFL draft this year. You would think.
Yeah, I think it's on the table because Smith's deal is really a 1 year deal. And, perfect scenario is you have a great guy that can just step in, and then, if Harrison has a few more years to play with someone else, so be it. But you can just walk away. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be the big thing going forward in this draft is on paper, yes, we have the star talent, I feel like, at every level, defense, linebacker, secondary, but it is those depth pieces. And I thought we saw that last year with certain things where it just kind of all falls apart and we just lacked in that depth area. So this is going to be a huge draft at trying to rebuild that and get at least serviceable people that can just fill in time
yeah.
being.
And if you look at their, players under contract for 23, then you see a few people that come off the books, and then it's like, oh my goodness, they're going to have a big hole there. Like I think Delvin Tomlinson originally signed only a 2 year deal. So
Yep.
like, what do you have after him? A bunch of guys, but no proven thing. And Thielen's deal is a little, heavy in the future,
Yeah.
and so Harrison Smith. So, what if a receiver, like Garrett Wilson, the impact of receivers nowadays on the game.
Olave. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I think this shows up just about everywhere. You know,
Yeah. And who knows how far up the Vikings will have Chris Olave or maybe Garrett Wilson on their draft board. Maybe they say, well, this is our best player available, and they go get Chris Olave. It's like,
I'm not anti-team draft a wide receiver. If there's
yeah,
a guy that you feel like it can make a splash impact, just go get him. Go
yeah,
get him.
yeah.
yeah. No, I would agree.
We are aligned.
What's that?
We are very aligned. Yeah, we see it the same way.
We're not first take. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, no.
I mean, I try to be a realist. I mean, there's so many different things that can go that can happen with NFL draft, and like I can't wait to see what happens in the first like 5 picks because I literally have no idea what any of these teams are going to
Yeah.
do. It's unique, and I cannot wait.
There's
to see.
no clear pecking order like some years there is.
Right.
Some years the 5, 6 picks just go as planned, and this just isn't clear at all.
And I want to see where these quarterbacks go too.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see when they start.
I'd like
falling.
to see, yeah, I'd like
Yeah,
to see
that's
one of them
another
legitimately go, and
possibility.
then I'd like to see somebody get desperate and trade up. And if 2 of them come off, then automatically somebody got pushed down.
Yep.
Do you think there's a possibility that I think I heard somebody say, well, what if Pittsburgh, decides, at 12, their guy's still available, Kenny Pickett or whoever they want at quarterback. Sounds like they like Kenny Pickett from what I heard, but not that I would. But anyways, if they wanted to trade up for Kenny Pickett, if you get Pittsburgh's pick in the first round this year and you get their their first round next year, I'd be all for that.
Yeah.
I'd be all for that. I'd say, what?
Another high pick this year.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like that's another body. That's another depth
trade a
piece,
pick and
future
then
starter.
maybe a second rounder this year yet, and then the first next year. Man, that'd be a huge deal because
The quality of the player at 12 and say 20 is pretty similar.
yeah.
I mean, not for the guy that lasted that long, down to 12, but in general, the depth is pretty similar. So.
And you know what happens every year too. Sorry, Carson. A team always gets desperate and always wants to move up. It happens every year. It just is a matter of fact when and where type deal. So I would be intrigued by that as well. That Pittsburgh idea, that would be very intriguing to me.
You know, you think about like the Christian Darrisaw last year and Justin Jefferson, you know, years ago. Those guys were later round picks that too many teams passed on. So.
Yep, exactly. Well, and then you get the ammo for next year to potentially trade up and draft your quarterback for the next 10 years. You know, maybe you go up and get Bryce Young, or maybe you go up and you get Stroud, CJ Stroud from Ohio State. Whoever your guy is, you go up and you get him because you have the capital to be able to do that. Like, that's huge if something like that came across the table, because beyond 2023, do the Vikings for sure have Kirk Cousins penciled in as their quarterback? I'm not so sure because of those void years that were added on to the deal, you know? So I think this regime is probably more forward thinking, and it's easy for me to say that now, but they're more forward thinking probably than what Rick Spielman was. But I guess we'll find out. We'll wait and see. But let's go into some of the off-season stuff that you guys really haven't had a chance to talk on the podcast about so far. Chandon Sullivan obviously signing, Harrison Phillips, and then Zadarius Smith are the big ones. Returning Patrick Peterson, we talked about already. What are your overall thoughts on how the Vikings have fared this offseason? Chandler, let's start with you.
I like the moves that they've made. This is Zadarius Smith signing. Obviously, has been the key signing of the offseason. Going into this new defensive scheme that we're going to be running, they don't want to say it's a 3-4 or a 4-3. It's just kind of whoever they're playing that week. But I think you're getting a guy who, if is healthy, will complement Danielle Hunter very well. I think ensuring that he'll be back was key as well. There's still some depth issues that they got to clear up. Like I said before, Chandon Sullivan, I thought it was a fine pick. He'll be fine for a 1-year type deal. I feel like it's just death taxes in the Minnesota Vikings stealing some Packer players, and then sooner or later, the revolving door is that these players will go play for the Seattle Seahawks. So I feel like that's always the case. But I like the moves that they've made so far. I would have liked them to maybe possibly looked at signing a better offensive lineman or going after someone there, but they must feel pretty confident in the Davis guy that they signed, along with Wyatt Davis stepping in maybe. But then you also hear the rumblings from last year. The scout department didn't think he was worth would be undraftable or something. I saw that hot rumor, but I just don't know how you can say that about a guy that was offensive lineman of the year in the Big Ten. So who knows where that story is coming from. But I think just continuing to add depth, I've liked what they've done so far. Is it going to be enough to put them over the top here and contend for an NFC North title? We'll find out. They're banging a lot of chips on the table that this new coaching staff will get the best out of these players. So we'll see. I think so far it's been all right. Nothing crazy, which was, I think, to be expected. But it all will, on paper, it's fine. But it's nothing like you're seeing in Jacksonville, which, my God, I don't know about throwing around all that money. I like
Miami.
it, but it's nothing crazy. Or Miami, right?
Los Angeles Chargers.
We're just gonna run it back and hope for the best.
I mean, for me, other than the Zadarius Smith signing, it's been pretty underwhelming, to be honest with you. I expected a boatload of changes. Really, I did. And I think Kwesi may have gotten the word from ownership, hey, we don't want to tear this whole thing down. We want you to do what you can to win now, but also, as Kwesi said, competitive rebuild, which is kind of an oxymoron, but it's something that he used, and the Vikings are going to attempt it. So, Kevin, what do you think of the approach from him so far this offseason and the Vikings in general?
Yeah, so I'm 100% on board with what they've done and how they've done it. I can appreciate what you're saying, a little underwhelming, but I think they would have overpaid to get anybody other than who they've gotten. And I think the Harrison Phillips signing and even Zadarius Smith and Sullivan and Jesse Davis, like it all reflects how quickly their scouting department has gotten aligned with their coaching staff. And clearly that was a problem, at least in the latter years of, with Spielman. And like these guys really fit exactly what they want to do, and they bring a leadership and a mentality for a specific scheme. So I think it's really been very shrewd, and they've gotten really good contracts on these guys. Like they haven't signed a guy to a 5-year deal that there's no way he's going to get to the last year of it. Like, so I'm pretty impressed. I don't know of anything I would have done differently, other than I'd like to know why Eric Flowers wasn't in the mix for this guard spot. Like, I looked at his tape last year. Like, he's a first round talent, and he played like it last year. I don't know why he got turned loose. They have connections to him. They would know him. I don't know why they didn't pursue him. I don't know what his asking price was, but that would have been more exciting to me than Jesse Davis.
But I think a lot of things would have been more exciting than Jesse Davis, but I guess that's kind of leads me to my next question is, do you really trust the right guard situation right now? Like, that to me is the number one question mark on this team right now, and it was even before Patrick Peterson, I think, because that position last year was not.
They had Chris Boyd at cornerback before Patrick Peterson, so
that's true. That's true. That's true. And Cam Dantzler, and Chandon Sullivan. But yes. So yeah, I'm with Chandler. I really would have loved to see them go after one of these right guards, but as you said, it's so hard to pay $17 million like what Brandon Sheriff got to a right guard. Like, do you really want to pay that kind of money, especially for a guy that's 30 years old?
Yeah, and has had injuries and stuff like that. So I don't know. To me, like the Davis thing is, it's a low cost thing. The guy's played. He's fairly athletic for a big man. He's been playing out of position on an island at tackle on a crappy team with, I think, 5 different offensive line coaches in 4 years. And so, I mean, it's fine. Like, you got a guy, and if you've got one weakest link on offense, right guard's where you'd want it. So, and then, the other thing is, they've seen every practice rep Wyatt Davis took, just like they have Kellen Mond and Chaz Surratt. I'd like to know, like, hey, what do you see with these guys? Any hope at all? And of course, they're not going to just come right out and give you a straight answer on that, but their answer would be telling. And they know if Davis has a shot to push for this or not, Wyatt Davis. And if he does, then this makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the media really hasn't asked him about Wyatt Davis that much, or if they have, he hasn't said anything
You know,
because there's not really been anything. And obviously, we know kind of how the Vikings front office, aside from Spielman, felt about Wyatt Davis. But
yeah.
like
But
Chandler said,
wouldn't that be
he
a
did
good
some good
question?
things.
Like, hey, coach, you guys have obviously looked at everything you can and talked to everybody in the building. You know, the fans would love to know what these 3 third-round picks that didn't see any action last year, like, what do you think of them? Like,
Yeah.
and however they answer that, I think would be telling to an astute fan.
Yeah. And I do like that there are 3 potential possibilities for right guard. You got Davis, and you got Davis, and you've got Udo. Now, you look at what the Rams did with Brian Allen, the center, and you look at Garrett Bradbury, very similar players, but obviously Bradbury hasn't had the success that Brian Allen just had. Do you see a similar situation to where Kevin O'Connell can do something similar with Bradbury, where he can just turn this thing around and become at least maybe an average center? I mean, he's been pretty good at times in run blocking, but boy, when he sometimes off the line of scrimmage in pass blocking, it is not something we enjoy watching. So do you have hope there? I guess either one of you guys in that.
I I just think that's why you bring in Kevin O'Connell, is you are hoping to see some changes with these players that might have been put in bad positions by the other regime. Not saying they were put in bad positions, but it seems like that's more of the concentration of this coaching staff is, all right, we're going to game plan each week for this certain team, and we're going to put our guys in the best positions to succeed. So maybe this different scheme will help Bradbury, but again, it's just we'll find out. If Tyler Lindenbaum's there at 12, are we taking him type deal? Are we going to trade down and take him if he's still there? The hope is, yes, he was a first round pick. There is talent there. We just haven't seen it all come together, and maybe this will be finally the coaching staff that gets it out of him.
Yeah, I think inevitably he'll play better. I don't know how much better. Um, just the offensive philosophy of passing first to set up the whole game plan versus you got to run, you got to run. We got to establish the run, and then that put him in so many third and long plays, which just exposes Bradbury at his worst. No one passing situation, game plan for him, put the biggest guy you can right over him and power rush him. More of a pass, more less predictability and more of a quick rhythm thing, which O'Connell has talked about to get the best out of Cousins too, to quicken up his path to reads and getting the ball out. Like all that helps a guy like Bradbury. That's maybe 25% less of his reps are going to be in a vulnerable position. He'll do better then, and he's a more talented player than Brian Allen. He's much more athletic and mobile, and he's actually slightly bigger and stronger. But you know, he was super productive last year for the Rams, so Bradbury could do that.
From your perspective, Kevin, is there anything in particular that you see when I don't know how much film you've watched of Bradbury, but is there anything in particular that you think is just like, man, if he could fix that or one or two of these things, he could really turn things around, or haven't you been able to do much of
No,
that?
it's anchoring on pass protection. That is the glaring thing. I mean, he's really good at all the wide zone movement stuff. Very athletic, can do things that not many centers can. Um, but yeah, they got to work with them on how to anchor against a bull rush. And I mean, Akeem Hicks is going to make everybody look bad, and Zadarius Smith could line up over his nose and make him look bad, but I guess they won't have to face him. So, um, but they whatever he's doing wrong there, they gotta really focus on that. And people don't realize, but you know, he was he was kind of a converted guy. Like he hasn't been playing offensive line his whole life, and so he's a little green and a little bit of a late bloomer, and he's kind of blown up as big as he can be. So I thought after last year they should have him lose weight and turn him into a tight end or fullback, but
Fullback.
I don't think
Yes.
I don't think this offense really has a big demand for fullbacks. So
Wow, with his hands, you might as well put him at tight end after that run
that
in
was the
Green Bay.
highlight of his whole season, wasn't
That's
it?
right. That's
It
right.
was. Well, like Kevin was saying, I've heard like Ben Lieber talk about this too on different radio shows. He was mentioning the same thing. It's all about his anchoring and something with his technique and hips. I mean, I'm no offensive line expert on how he should do it, but I've heard the same things from other people. Is that it's just a big technique issue. He probably could get a little stronger too, but is his contract then up after this year, or is it that 5th-year option? If he does come out and play, have not a great year, but a very above average, we'll say a solid year. What kind of are we looking? What kind of contract are we looking at possibly giving him?
Yeah. See, I don't know. I don't think they'll renew his 5th year. Well,
No.
I don't know unless he like really sets the world on fire.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
The number's just too high. The only thing they could say, hey, you really turned it around, and they could work out a long-term extension in lieu of just picking up the 5th-year option, and then that might be more palatable. But
Right.
there's a drill they run like kind of with a broomstick that forces the guy to arch his back and sink your hips and stuff. And the minute he doesn't do that, he's done. Like so, I don't know. He just I think they were enamored with him because of his athleticism for the zone scheme they were moving to, and they've spent a lot of focus on that, getting the timing down of that, and all the emphasis was on the run game, the run game, the run game. Making that go. And then when that didn't work, then we haven't really worked on you know the pass protection aspect of it because we've been so committed to the run. So I think that's the biggest thing with coaching that is going to help.
So was Tony Sperano, do you know or do you remember, was he a big reason why the Vikings took Bradbury, or at least was he Sperano approved
No, I think that was after his death.
after he passed?
That
Okay.
was after he'd passed, and when Kubiak came in, he was a zone thing, and Zimmer wanted to change to the zone thing, which was traumatic because most of their offensive linemen didn't fit that. And
Mm.
that's a big reason why Spielman, never refortified the offensive line because it was one style to start with, and then he switched midstream. And he did that multiple times,
Makes sense though, right?
from Norv to Shermer to, then he had Sperano, and then, yeah. So
Yeah. I loved Mike Zimmer for a time, but man, I'm glad that they have moved on. It was time. Sorry to Bill Parcells, his best friend. I still think it was hard. It was time to move on, despite his. Oh, you'll never find a better head coach than Mike Zimmer. Like, well, maybe in your mind, but also Mike Zimmer's at the point of, and I don't think either he has not even been offered a job, or he just is not wanting to get a job right now, which heard recently that he was kind of in a rough place right now, which obviously we don't like to hear. Hopefully he gets back on his feet and stuff, but man, it's the way it ended for him. I'm sure he's still trying to.
I think pretty drained, pretty spent.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is, for as much as you blame him and Spielman, and the chemistry between the two of them, they were connected most of the way. And then 2 years in a row going into a season thinking they had it, and then it just didn't work out. I think it just sucked the life out of both of them. And but I think they both thought they had good teams coming into each of the last 2 years. And then, you know, when they didn't catch the breaks and they had injuries, they just couldn't take it anymore, and they started blaming the other guy. And you know,
Yeah,
it,
and
here we are. Yeah,
Zimmer always would say, I told you this was a good team. I feel like this is a good team and all
yep,
this. It's like yeah, well, how's that 8-8 and 8-9 treating
yeah.
you? Like good teams don't go 8-8, 8-9. Good teams go, 10-6, 11 and
I mean,
5.
I think they both expected to be in the playoffs this past season, but
Yeah,
they lost about 3 games that they easily could have won, and they just didn't win them.
might have been more than that even.
It might have been
But
more
yeah.
than that, exactly. So, uh, and on the heels of a disappointing season before that, they just weren't going to get another do-over.
So if
So
you
they
go
knew they
back and you look
get
at
the
those
do-over.
situations, do you think to yourself, man, if we only had the right head coach to be in those situations, do you think we win more of those games? It's hard for me to say. Maybe.
I, I think that's what the owners think.
Yeah, I
Is
I, I
is
agree. I think that's
that's
exactly what the
that's the
Wolves
one
think.
thing that we can control as owners. We can't not make Delvin fumble, and we can't not make the kicker miss a kick, and we can't play too lax on third down coverage against whomever. But we can change the coach.
Could maybe score more than 3 points in the second half of that Arizona game, though.
Exactly. Yeah. So
But yeah, exactly. I think that was part of Zimmer's problem was just the idea that once we're ahead, then we can just slow down the offense, just run the ball and play keep away. My defense will handle it. Well,
yep.
Zim, sorry to tell you, your defense is not as good as it used to be. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of the problem with Zimmer's philosophy the last 2 years is he expected his defense to be better than what it ended up being. But,
Yeah.
anyways, moving on. Any other thoughts before we get into the mock draft? Harrison Phillips, Johnny Munt, the big signing, Austin Schlottman as well, Jordan Hicks, another nice pickup. I did like that pickup. But any other thoughts on what they've done so far?
I totally forgot about the Jordan Hicks signing. I did like that signing as well. I think he'll fit in a little bit better than Nick Vigil, hopefully. I got a question for you guys is what's going to happen to Anthony Barr? What is his outlook going to be looking like? Is there a possibility we get farther into free agency that we could bring him back on a cheap 1-year deal? I do feel like that ship has sailed, so I don't know. And I know Quasi's mentioned it sounds like he's not even on their radar, but I'm just interested to see where he's going to end up.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere else. I think he had that voided year, and so he was already counting whatever 10 million or 9 million against the cap. And when they just let that expire without trying to work anything out with him, I think that was goodbye.
Yeah.
And but he's going to sign somewhere for a lot less than he's been making. And if he stays healthy, he'll be a really good pickup for somebody. But
So I had heard that he was contemplating retirement. Now, I don't know if that's still the case. Maybe he's trying to run it back for a year or two yet, but I've heard that his body is just shot, and
yeah,
I can believe it with all the injuries he's dealt with in his career.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yep.
and if you make 10 million a year for 4 or 5 years, you should be okay. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And Anthony Barr seems like he's a really intelligent dude too, so I think he can
yeah, I don't
be
I don't
fine.
think he's been spending it at the strip club and whatever. So
Yeah, yeah. No, and great guy in the community. That would be one thing I'm sure the Vikings would love to keep around. Great dude in the
yeah,
community, but yeah, well, cool. I think I think before the Za'Darius Smith signing, there was more of a possibility, but now I'm
Right.
pretty positive it's not a possibility anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think that was the role that they had in mind for him. And
yep,
then,
which
you know,
would have been interesting.
he didn't move far enough in their direction. And then this thing with Za'Darius came available when it fell through with the Ravens, and you know the deal they worked out with him was sweet. I mean, it's kind of a
Yeah.
pay as you go.
Oh
You know,
my
it
goodness.
sounds like a big thing, but they and that's where this culture thing has given them an edge. Like when Quasey says like win at the edges, that culture thing has been how you get guys to take deals like that. You know.
Yeah. And man, those contracts, like you said, like all the contracts really they've made this offseason have been so team friendly. And that's exactly what the Vikings need to do because of the cap situation. But if they
Yeah.
can do that kind of thing, even when they have better cap situation, that gives them so much more flexibility. So,
Yeah.
And Rob Brzezinski we trust, right?
yep, Quasi and Rob, here we go.
Yeah.
We're going places now, boys. All
And I
right.
think part of why the new regime has had this run it back thing is most of the people they've come in and like it was pretty good people. Like stuff didn't need to be blown up. The culture wasn't that bad,
Right.
with a different leader. So
And like I think I've said this before on the show with Carson is Zimmer inherited not I mean it wasn't the best culture. I mean before nothing against Leslie Frazier, but you go way back like there was really I felt like there wasn't like a culture set, because Brad Childress kind of had a mess and Leslie Frazier had to take over that. And then he had a lot of cleaning up to do, which he did a good job. It just
yeah,
ultimately didn't work out. So, yeah, I totally agree with that comment.
yeah.
All righty, guys. We ready to mock?
Let's mock it.
All right. Here we go. I've got the music rolling here. Got the rock and roll music rolling.
We will
And
mock you.
yeah, we will mock you. That's right. That's right. Nope. Can't afford that, Kevin. Just the regular rock music available via our friends at StreamYard. So appreciate it, StreamYard. Shout out to them. But let's go ahead and get started. Kevin, why don't you kick us off with the first pick in the NFL draft? The Jacksonville Jaguars select
Aiden Hutchinson, defensive end,
Aiden
Michigan.
Hutchinson.
Yeah.
All right. And there he goes. All right. Number one
I
is
think
off
he's
the
the
board.
consensus top guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for like early mock drafts, it was Kayvon, wasn't it? And then he kind of started gradually falling back. And now he's, boy, I don't even know if he's top 5 even anymore. People don't even have him in the top 5 sometimes. So now you put in Aiden there in that spot. And yeah, I mean, Detroit's probably upset because they didn't get their Michigan guy, but it's yeah, it's a good pick. He should be a great player. I mean, he's not, I wouldn't say he's Chase Young talent caliber, but he's pretty close. I mean, he's up there for sure. I guess that's my thought, but that'd be a huge win for the Jags, wouldn't it?
I think so. I have him going number 1 too. He just took over games last year if you watch some Michigan games. So I think he's the consensus number 1 just because the way he took over games, like I just said. I don't know who you'd rather take over him. I mean, you could go offensive line there if you're Jacksonville, but I feel like he's the best player available. If you are a big Kyle Hamilton fan, which some people are, and I see a lot of people have him number 1, but I think Aiden Hutchinson is just someone that's gonna step in and help your defense tremendously.
Yeah, yep. I think that's the right choice there as well. So Chandler, How about it? Number 2, Detroit Lions.
Well, let's get weird. I guess I have them taking Malik Willis. I think they're gonna change some things up there. I don't think Jared Goff's the answer. I don't really have a good reason why they're gonna take him. I just feel like that's a Detroit thing to do. He can sit underneath Goff for a year. I do like
is that a
Willis.
good idea?
I don't know. I don't.
Sitting under Jared Goff.
I'm going to be honest. I was trying to race and fill out this mock draft, and I just really think Detroit's going to Detroit, and they're going to take a quarterback, and it's going to be Malik Willis.
I have that feeling too, and I tell you what, Malik Willis has picked up some steam lately, and I really do think he's the best quarterback in this draft, and I really don't think it's that close. But I think that's the scary pick for me for the Lions, is getting Malik Willis and getting their franchise quarterback. I'm scared. I'm a little scared. I'm not going to lie. But, he's going to be there. The Jaguars, there's no way the Jaguars are taking Malik Willis. So, the only way that he's not there is if there's a trade. But, what do you think, Kevin? Are you scared the Lions found their quarterback?
I'm a little surprised, but that would be a good place for him to go, because they got a guy, it's Goff, but they got a guy that'll play, and he can sit on the bench, and the expectations are for Detroit to win now anyway, so that'd be a good situation for him. And then if he hits, they're set for a long time. So that isn't a ridiculous move at all. And if there's other teams, if they send out the signal they're serious about doing that, they might get more interest in the pick too. So,
is that who you had them going with?
Maybe not. I probably would have played it more by the book, but I like it. I like that's going to happen in this draft. I think there's going to be not predictable picks early.
Is that a spot? I think that's a spot too where maybe Detroit looks to move down too, if a team does fall in love with someone and they can accumulate picks, because they have a ways to go with building that roster, and maybe I don't know, maybe a team falls in love, maybe Carolina's like, hey, we gotta assure this. I hear whoever in Atlanta or Seattle's trying to move up, so it could be a trading destination, I think, as well.
And with the 3rd overall pick, the Houston Texans select offensive tackle Evan Neal from Alabama. Obvious need for the Texans, and since the number 1 quarterback just went off the board, let's get whoever's going to be behind center, which right now looks like maybe Davis Mills. Let's get him some protection. So that's who I have going to the Texans at the number 3 spot. Thoughts, Chandler?
I think it's good. I mean, someone's got to protect old Davis there. Maybe they go defense. That's another team that just has so many holes I think they got to fill, and I don't think they're going to go wrong with whoever they might select at that pick. It just seems like a mess there in Houston. I wouldn't want any job of trying to fix that.
Or Lovie Smith. My goodness.
It's just a crapshoot there. You don't really know what they're going to be doing or expect them to do. Again, I don't think they could go wrong with selecting anyone. I think Davis Mills has some potential, and you might as well plug some talent around him, and so you can utilize what he at least shown you last year and hopefully build off of that.
Kevin, thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have any feel for the Houston Texans at all, but I think they're in a good spot. At 3, there's 5 guys that I think they could pick any one of those 5 guys, and it's going to help them a lot. And I don't think there's a lot of risk reward to these guys that'll go in this area. So, Evan Neal is the skinniest 6'7" 337-pound guy I've ever seen. And he ran I mean, he's a little raw, but I don't know. A chance to get a left tackle that's a 10-year left tackle, and the guy can play anywhere to start with. I don't know. It's hard to argue with that. I don't.
All right. Very good. Well, we had Kevin take Aiden Hutchinson with the Jaguars' first pick. We had Chandler go with the Lions, Malik Willis. And I took Evan Neal, offensive tackle, Alabama, with the Houston Texans' third pick. So that's a recap of the first three picks. Let's go with pick number 4. I'll take pick number 4 as well. And with the fourth pick, the New York Jets select Kyle Hamilton, safety. And he is off the board, Notre Dame. So the Vikings will not be pairing two Notre Dame safeties together. But so that's who I have the Jets taking. And they finally replace their guy who they traded to the Seahawks a few years ago, Mr. Jamal Adams. So they got their guy. They got their safety. What do you think of the pick, Kevin? Do you think it's a good pick? Would you rather see the Jets go offensive line?
Again, like at that place, I don't think they can go wrong. I think Kyle Hamilton's going to be a better pro than Jamal Adams. So I don't know.
That was a steal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What they got for Jamal Adams?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, the guy's deficient on coverage. So
he's a heck of a Madden player, though. I'll just tell you that.
Yeah. I don't know how many games that'll win you in real life. But, yeah.
0. All right, let's go back to Chandler. Chandler, I'm going to give you the Giants' first pick in my goodness, they've got the 5th and the 7th pick of the first round, and then they don't have any picks the rest of the round. But man, if the Giants hit on these picks, guys, they could really make some noise in that NFC East, I think. I mean, if they get all the players around that they need to get around them, around Daniel Jones, and depending on what you think of Daniel Jones, maybe you take a quarterback with one of these two picks. But what do you think, Chandler?
I think they're gonna run with Danny Dimes. I think Brian Daboll's gonna roll the dice with him for at least a year and give it a shot, and then they'll probably reevaluate after the year. I honestly have no idea what the Giants would do with this pick. I have them taking the offensive tackle from NC State. I cannot say his name, so I'm not going to attempt it. If someone Iquanu, there we go. I don't think I've ever heard someone say it. That's my problem. Iquanu.
Icky.
There we go. I have the Giants taking a tackle so they can get their bookend tackles with the kid from, would they draft a kid from Georgia a couple of years ago or a year ago? Was it
Andrew Thomas? Yeah.
There we go. I think they solidify that offensive line and help Danny Dimes out a little bit. That's who I have them taking 5th overall pick.
All right, there he goes to the Giants. They got one of their big positions filled that they needed to get filled. And the Carolina Panthers with the 6th selection of the NFL draft, made by Kevin Brown. Kevin,
yeah,
who are the Panthers going with?
Malik Willis, things just get worse and worse for.
Yeah, right. Poor Panthers. They could have had Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. Man, that's hard. I think.
Wouldn't have that been just the Vikings' luck, though?
Yeah.
They get the 6th pick. Oh, we got Malik Willis to replace Cousins. Nope, he goes to the Lions.
Yeah. So I think in this scenario, I see Carolina going Travon Walker.
Travon Walker.
I think he's almost like a Zadarius Smith talent. Like he can play defensive end, defensive tackle, drop back, line up anywhere. I think that dynamic would make him a intriguing chess piece for a defense. And, you know, I think, you know, they have to just go best athlete here. I don't think they can, you know, take a specific need. I think this is the guy that would have the most versatility and impact for him. So.
All right, so Travon Walker, the edge from Georgia, goes to the Carolina Panthers with the 6th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. And the Giants are on the clock again. My goodness. This is like a dream scenario. This is like Madden right here. It's come to fruition in real life.
It's those damn New York teams, I'm telling you.
That's right. And the Jets have another pick coming up too. But the Giants, they are going to stick with the trenches, I have a feeling. And I have, with the 7th pick, the New York Football Giants selecting Kayvon Thibodeau, edge from Oregon, to really get back going with that defensive line that they've not really had, it seems like, for a while. I mean, Leonard Williams, well, is it Leonard Williams they have, or is he with the Jets? I can't remember.
Oh, he was with the... Oh, go ahead.
He's with the Giants?
The Giants now, yeah.
Because he was with the Jets, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, that's who I have the Giants taking.
A good pick.
What do you... Yeah, you think that was a good pick?
That's who I would have picked if I was them.
All right, so they got their offensive lineman, and they got their edge rusher. And now, while I wait for my browser to load again, let's see. I might have to redo this. Oh, let's see. Okay, so the 7th pick is the Giants. Just had that. How about the Falcons? Let's go to the Falcons. Kevin, we'll go back to you for the Falcons selection at 8. Who do you have the Falcons taking?
Wow. The Falcons. I would say Sauce Gardner. Best guy at this
Okay.
stage. Yeah, would go Sauce.
Okay. He's going with Sauce Gardner at 8. And then Chandler has the 9th pick of the draft. It's the Seattle Seahawks, who appear to be in a big-time rebuild of their own. Chandler, who are you getting to help out old Drew Lock or replace old Drew Lock?
I think they could go again. Like you said, they're in a full rebuild. They could go a bunch of different ways. I think they could use probably some help on the offensive line. They could use some defensive help. They could try and replace Bobby Wagner. But you know what teams do when they lose a really good quarterback? They try to replace that quarterback. So I'm going with Matt Corral out of Ole Miss. I think Seattle will try and start the rebuild there. Why not? Let's have fun with this mock and give Seattle a new toy to play with.
Matt Corral goes 9 overall to the Seattle Seahawks. And that brings us back to me with the Jets pick. The 2nd Jets pick of the 1st round. They took Kyle Hamilton, a safety, with my other pick. I got to pick them twice. So now the Jets on the offensive side, perhaps? I think so. I think I'm going to have them go with an offensive tackle or offensive guard. I've also seen him called an offensive guard. Charles Cross, Mississippi State, goes to the Jets to help solidify that offensive line for Zach Wilson. And that's where I feel the Jets maybe would be going. I think maybe they could have gone with Jermaine Johnson, maybe the edge, maybe, but I think that offensive line is where they needed help. Thoughts?
A left tackle. Yeah, good. The
I,
receiver, I think, too. Like, I think
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson or Drake London would make
Right.
sense there.
I agree. I think getting Zach Wilson all the help that he can get is going to be beneficial, and keeping him up on the ground, I think, is going to be the key, and hopefully giving him some more time. I wish we got to see a little bit more of him from last year, so we'll see. I think giving him more weapons and tools around him is just going to make the Jets even more better. But yeah, I going with the wide out too, giving them more help out on the outside. I think that could be another route that the Jets would go in this position here.
All right. Who should I give the next pick? And then who gets the Vikings pick?
I don't want the Vikings, so I will take the
All right.
Commanders with Carson
Going
Wentz.
to the Washington Commanders.
I think. Man.
Do they go quarterback too? To replace Carson Wentz in a year.
Quarterback. I'm not going quarterback. I really don't. I think they. I'm not, to be completely fair. I don't know what their secondary position's like right at the moment. Maybe they go with a Derek Stingley. Maybe they go with a McDuffie type there. But why not give Carson Wentz another weapon and go with that Garrett Wilson? I think they'd be very happy to have him at 11. I know they have a pretty solid wide receiver room right now. Why not give him some more help?
Pair him with Terry McLaurin.
To Ohio State. Right, Ohio State, Terry. Scary Terry. Give him to Ohio State kids.
Man, that would be fun for Carson Wentz. Would that mean he's good? I don't know, but that's a whole nother topic. Anyways, now the moment of truth, the moment we've all been waiting for. The Minnesota Vikings with the 12th overall selection in the 2022 NFL Draft. Kevin Brown has the selection. Kevin, who are the Vikings taking with this pick?
Derek Stingley. But honestly, the board has broken nicely. Because to me, Stingley, Jermaine Johnson, Jordan Davis, any of those three guys would be huge. So if the phone's ringing and people want to move up a tick or two, I'd listen.
All right.
But Stingley, I mean...
Do you think the Vikings will have Stingley above Davis on their draft board?
I don't know. He hasn't run yet, but supposedly he's healthy enough to. So if he doesn't run a 4.59 or something, I think they're good with him. I mean, there's so many connections that know him, and if they pass on him, it's because they don't like him, for some reason. But talent-wise, I personally think he's, he would have been in the running for top 3 picks if he would have been healthy and played all year.
My only scare would be if somehow Jordan Davis turned into the next Aaron Donald and the Vikings didn't take him.
Yeah.
I would be like, no. I would not be happy because
I don't think I love Jordan Davis, and I think especially their 3-4, he'd be great. I just don't think he's an every down player.
okay.
I don't think he's going to give you as many snaps as an Aaron Donald and be as much of an impact on the pass rush. I mean, so to some degree, almost positional need is how I sort out these guys that are really close.
Yeah.
Positional value maybe more than need. So,
yeah.
Cornerback can kind of lock down half the field if they're really good. And Stingley is like cornerback 1 talent, like lockdown playmaker talent if healthy. So
I was just looking too at the Eagles. They've got 3 picks in five pick. They have 3 of 5 picks. Or 3 of 6, I think. Or no, 3 of 5. They have 15, 16, and 19. Man, the damage they could do too if they wanted to trade up for somebody, or if they wanted to take 3 players. That, whew, they could go and grab. Not only could they go grab Jordan Davis, but they could also go grab Drake London if they wanted him, and they could also go grab Andrew Booth Jr. if they wanted a corner opposite of Darius Slay. I mean, that they could have a really good draft.
Yep.
So
yeah, they're in great shape.
Yeah, there's a few teams out there right now that have, if you're just looking at it, I mean, both New York teams, Philadelphia, I think there's a lot of teams that got to feel pretty confident going into this draft because the options are unlimited for a lot of these teams that need holes filled, or teams like Philadelphia that have been to the playoffs and they just need to, refine some positions and just get better in some areas. So I would be very excited for a few of these teams that are in the position that they're in.
absolutely. Let me do just a quick draft recap. So again, we had Aiden Hutchinson going number 1, Malik Willis going number 2, Jags, Lions, Texans taking Evan Neal, Jets taking Kyle Hamilton, Giants taking Ikem Ekwonu, and the Panthers taking Travon Walker, the Giants taking Kayvon Thibodeau, Falcons taking Sauce Gardner, Seahawks taking Matt Corral, Charles Cross to the Jets, Garrett Wilson to the Commanders, and the Vikings getting Derek Stingley. And that is all with Jermaine Johnson, as you mentioned, Jamison Williams, who apparently has crept up draft boards, the wide receiver from Alabama, offensive tackle, Northern Iowa, Trevor Penning, Vikings probably wouldn't go offensive tackle anyway, Andrew Booth Jr., I've seen mocks with him going there, and then Jordan Davis.
I just saw Booth needs hernia surgery.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that might move him down.
Probably bumps him down a little bit, but
yeah,
he's very talented.
Yeah, and then you got McDuffie. I've seen people mocking the Vikings, and then Tyler Linderbaum as well is the center from Iowa, my boy, as an Iowa guy. But I can't complain with that pick. I think the Vikings need the depth at cornerback for sure, and I mean, I think honestly, I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine if they even went with Chris Olave. I mean, I would be pretty surprised if they did, but I wouldn't be against it. I'm with
you.
And totally that would also give you freedom to maybe you wouldn't want to trade one of your other receivers, but definitely not Jefferson. But maybe you think about trading KJ Osborne. I don't know. What could he get on the open market? Or maybe Amir Smith-Marset. I don't know. Maybe you just want that much depth. I don't know. So possibilities could pop up for the Vikings with that as well. But so let's say let's play a little what if here. Let's say Derek Stingley's off the board. Let's say Sauce Gardner's off the board. Let's say all the top 2 to 3 corners are off the board, maybe even the top 4. Do you see the Vikings? What position would you see the Vikings going with? Like, let's say if Jordan Davis was available, let's say, I guess just where would you see that if the top 4 corners are off the board?
Is it too early to think about taking one of the linebackers? Do you take that Dean from Georgia? Do you think about taking the kid from Utah? I don't know if they're fits necessarily, but is that a position you look at? I think if that comes to to be the situation that where you have a bunch of those guys off, I think that's really when you start looking to move back. But I am a Jordan Davis fan. I like what he could bring, but I also do agree that he's not going to be an every down guy, which is a concern. He is a large human being, but I feel like he could be very disruptive. Excuse me, I said that wrong. But he could be a big impact into the defense, but that's tough to say. It's it's tough to say. I could see them moving back if that's the situation.
The other good player at that spot is Jermaine Johnson. He's an edge guy, and supposedly they've solved their edge guy needs. But I don't think you can ever have too many pass rushers. So I think
Exactly.
Ed Donatel figured out here's Jermaine Johnson. Now you got 3 guys that can bring it. So
That's true.
Now there's no excuses.
exactly, get to the quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meet at the
Deep
quarterback.
leaders. That's right.
Yep.
Meet at the quarterback. That is for sure. So let's say the Vikings do take that cornerback with that first pick. Let's say it is Derek Stingley. Then is there anybody that you guys have heard or that you guys would really like to see the Vikings take in the second and or third rounds that would be a different position, and that is likely going to be available?
So if they got a corner at 1,
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't have anyone off the
me-
top of my head, Carson.
Me neither. Me neither. I was
gotta
kind of
do some more soul searching with some of the deeper
That's right.
guys that are in the draft.
yeah, I think it's a best player available at all but say 3 positions, and it could be a safety, Jalen Petrie, Lewis Seen, Brisker. It could be a tight end like Irv is in his
That's
last
right.
year. Trey McBride and the guy from UCLA are good. That's maybe a little early for them. I don't know. Is Desmond Ritter a consideration for the long term? If he was still there.
Yeah.
A guard. If guards kind of tend to slide, maybe there's a guard, offensive lineman.
Desmond Ritter would be very interesting.
That would be,
very interesting.
they'd say, well, he's best served by not having to play right away. So perfect situation.
Do you go safety?
Yep. I think safety is really viable.
Like Daxton Hill maybe falls into the second round. Lewis Sign.
I'd
I
be
think
all
that's how you
over
say that.
Daxton Hill if he lasted that long.
Yeah. I think if you could get one of those 2 guys, I mean, that wouldn't be so bad. But like you said, tight end, like I think a lot of people are just assuming Irv Smith is going to come back and just light the world on fire, which if he does, great. I'm glad. I'd be all for it. But we don't even know how healthy he's going to be coming out right away, for
Yep.
one. And for 2, you don't have Tyler Conklin anymore as your backup tight end. You have Johnny Munt, who, if you look at how much they signed him for, he's not probably going to be a 2-dimensional tight end. He's more of a run blocking or pass blocking tight end. So do you think the Vikings need to or consider drafting a tight end in the first 3 or 4 rounds in this draft?
I think tight end will be a priority for them in the first 3-4 rounds. I think they're pretty familiar with the top guys, and I think it's a pretty deep tight end group. So I think within the first 4 rounds, one of those guys will be a tight end.
Do you think there's any hope for Zach Davidson?
Maybe.
Bring him into training camp at least.
I saw him in a shot at the facility. He's been working out. Like his arms are bigger. Um, he always had kind of the receiving ability, but
Right. He's athletic. I mean, there's no question about that. But it's
yeah,
just a matter of if he can catch and he can run routes and he can,
yeah.
like you said, maybe adapt to being more of a blocker too with some of the strength and stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
if anything, you got one hell of an athletic backup punter, right?
That's
exactly,
right.
exactly.
That's right. Who needs
I
Johnny
think,
Hecker?
I think they like a lot of these guys that have been, didn't get any action last year. Like, I would think they're excited about Longwoo.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
how can we get
Yep.
him the ball? I mean, this guy like flashes Robert Smith, like
Yep.
he's fast. And then, I think, Patrick Jones, Janarius Robinson. Janarius Robinson is got elite edge rush ability, but he doesn't know what he's doing at all. Um, I think, like I was looking at earlier today, last year's draft, like who would I have taken instead of Mond and Wyatt Davis and Surratt? And looking at my board, then I would have taken Wyatt Davis instead of Mond, and then I would have
Mm.
taken Surratt. So I, I don't know. And then I think I was going to take like Michael Carter or something, but I don't know. It's just like weird. Like I think Surratt is a good player, and I think he'll fit their scheme. Like he's a fly and chase. I don't know what the deal was. Like he missed time, and once you
Zimmer
miss,
hated that class.
yeah, once you miss time with Zimmer, you're done. Like the ship just sails without you. So,
And it just seems like, yeah, last year's class was just so raw. Like you just took a lot of guys that have the athletic ability, and I think you saw that Spielman did that so many times. Just take guys pure off athletic ability, and then the football will just come
Cordero
later with
Patterson,
coaching. I mean, well, wow, man, we screwed the pooch on that one. He could have. I mean,
Percy Harvin.
I can't believe it
and
took
I
someone
think
that
Zimmer
long.
felt the pressure to win now,
Yep.
so he wanted veteran guys.
Yeah.
He
But
wasn't worried about developing guys. He wanted guys that could win.
absolutely,
And that's
and
the
with
thing the Vikings never did hardly under the Zimmerman era is develop offensive talent.
Yeah,
I mean, either those offensive guys came in and they were good or they weren't, and that was pretty much it. Like Jefferson came in pretty much right away and was good.
and
And
that's his ultimate shortcoming. He was a defensive coordinator that became the head coach, and he never positioned himself beyond that. So
And you know what? It was very nice to see. I saw a quote that Kevin O'Connell said, some weeks I might just go into the defensive room and be in there and let Wes take the offensive side and let him run with it. So, how nice is it going to be to have a head coach,
yeah,
put his fingers in a little bit of everything and,
yeah.
make his voice be heard?
Zimmer wouldn't let his own kid call the plays.
right,
Right.
right,
So,
right.
like, when are you going to pass the baton?
Yeah. Hopefully Kevin O'Connell doesn't start reaming the new coordinator Donatel in the middle of the game. Say, you got to stop the run on this play. You got to stop the run on this play. Oh my gosh, that was just terrible. Like Zimmer just yelling into Kubiak's ear. We should run the ball. We should run the ball. It's like, let him do his job.
Yeah.
It's I
If you
yeah,
if you hired the guy, you have to support the guy.
Right.
exactly.
Yep.
Like
Exactly, which I think
and with these players, like it's your job to coach them. Like
right.
I don't care what they're not good at. It's your job to help them get better. So
Yep.
do your
Yep.
part to help them get better. So,
And I think that's why Zim went through so many offensive coordinators is partly because he didn't let them do what they're supposed to do. He had to stick his nose. Sometimes I think he stuck his nose too far, but he didn't do it with the players as much. He didn't really say anything to some of the players. He just said it to the coaches. It seemed like because like everybody said that he didn't start meeting with Kirk Cousins until year 4. It's like, well, you
which
might
is
want to talk to your
absurd.
quarterback. But so yeah, I you know tight end that would really be interesting to me. There are 3 tight ends on this draft board that I'm seeing that are ahead of him, but Jeremy Ruckert, I would really love to see him come to the Vikings from Ohio State. I think he's a really good athlete at tight end, and he could be a really good complement to Irv Smith, or even be above Irv Smith if Irv Smith isn't healthy right away or isn't ready to be as good as we're hoping he's going to be yet. But man, if Irv Smith comes back healthy and you pair him with Jeremy Ruckert and the rest of the offense, and that's assuming the right guard situation's figured out and Garrett Bradbury doesn't get mauled, but things would be pretty outstanding on the offensive side. Defense, I still would be having some question marks. I would still have some question marks there, but those Derek Stingley, if you added him, you add Jeremy Ruckert, maybe you add Daxton Hill at safety. That wouldn't be too bad. Wouldn't be too bad of a top 3 draft picks there.
It looks good on paper, but is it going to work out on the? Is Dalvin going to fumble, or are we going to miss that kick? I mean, just the luck of the draw, the Minnesota Vikings.
Because they look good on paper coming into last year too.
Right. Yep.
Exactly.
Really so.
Yep, that's always the question with this team.
This is even before my time, but a friend of mine always reminds me of this. In 1972, when Fran Tarkenton came back to the Vikings from the Giants, he was like the missing piece of the puzzle, and like all they needed, because they had like Gary Quazzo or something at quarterback, and they went 7-7 that year.
Oh,
Big
wow!
disappointment. And then they got Chuck Foreman, and then they went to like Super Bowls, like 3 more Super Bowls right after that. Like,
wow!
But that failed year with Tarkenton, that first year, today it would be saying blow it up, start over, full rebuild, get rid of these guys, don't run it back. Get rid of all these old guys, don't run it back.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
I mean, like I said, I don't even remember 72, so I'm actually too old or not old enough for that.
Well, if you're too old for it, then we definitely, or if you're not old, then we definitely won't know. But yeah, that's maybe an interesting comparison. So you're saying the Vikings, so that's what everyone's going to take from this podcast.
We're running
Kevin
it back
Brown
to
is
72.
saying the Vikings are going to the
72.
Super Bowl for 3 straight years.
Yeah.
And not winning.
It was just like that. Like they brought in this veteran guy. It was the quarterback, and it failed miserably. He didn't live up to expectations, and during his prime, he was just as criticized as Cousins is. Like he didn't have an arm, and he couldn't win the big one. He didn't have an arm, and he ended up in the Hall of Fame. He's okay. I'm not saying that.
Pretty good end of the career. All right, gentlemen. Well, let's go ahead into final statements before we wrap things up. Kevin, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts, just as a whole, from the offseason and just everything we've talked about, culminating into one final thought here? Kevin, we might have lost him there. Oh. Chandler, let's go to you.
Final thoughts is we're getting into one of my favorite times of the year, even though I'm far behind it. Mock draft season, nothing better than it. So I'm pumped for the rumors to start flying, the absurd rumors. Those are always the best times. Seeing who's shooting up the draft boards, who's shooting way down low. It's a great time of the year because I think it's just hilarious to see everyone, a month out think they know where everyone's going to end up going, and it's going to be completely opposite. But again, this is the time where teams can hit that refresh button and regroup. So I'm excited to see what happens in the next month leading up to the draft and seeing all the rumors, and maybe the Vikings will add a few more names.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's going to be very interesting. I don't know if Kevin's going to join us back or not, but I think the thing that's most interesting to me is if the Vikings are going to go in to 2022 with this same offensive line room, or are they going to actually draft another offensive lineman or two to go and try and compete with Udo and Davis for the right guard spot, or are they going to draft a center maybe even to compete with Bradbury or potentially start over Bradbury? We'll find out, but yeah, I'm excited for this draft, and we're excited. I'm excited to see what the Vikings will do, and so far, like I said, I'm underwhelmed. I was underwhelmed until they signed Zadarius Smith. I'm probably thinking this offseason's probably been, I'd say, about a B plus, maybe a B plus right now for the Vikings, just based on them getting Chandon Sullivan and getting Patrick Peterson back. I'm kind of at that point where I'll give them a B plus. But if they can draft somebody like a corner, if they can get some more positions of needs filled, then I'm going to be getting into that A talk for an off season. But right now, I'd say I'll go with a B. I'll go with a B for right now. Kevin, if you want to go off season grade, whatever you want to say with your final statement, you got it this time.
My internet totally went out right when I started talking, so
perfect timing, right?
What you heard or not? No, I think the thing that Kwesi said about like winning at the edges, and I think these cultural things, like I've seen them in a real team building workplace environment, and these little things add up, and them getting Zadarius Smith on a team friendly contract and getting him to come here and getting Pat Pete to come back $4 million a year instead of $6 million a year, and the Hicks thing, the Harrison Phillips thing, reasonable deals. Like I think it just all starts to add up, and I think it'll make a difference. But it's a very competitive environment, so anything can happen. I wouldn't say I'm overwhelmed. I'm whelmed, and I'd give them a B, like you said. But I think they inherited a mess. Like
they did. Yeah.
I think they came into a situation that was set up for a window the last 2 years, at the expense of what it was going to be this year. So I think they've done really well considering all that.
Yeah. So. Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you all that were able to tune in for this episode of the Skol Purple Podcast. Patrick Peterson's back, and the Vikings are looking like they're taking shape, but still some moves that need to be made in the draft and maybe even free agency or maybe a trade. Who knows? We'll find out. We'll try and keep you updated on the Skol Purple Podcast, and yeah, looking forward to it. And maybe we'll do something special for the draft. We haven't talked much about it yet, but maybe we'll do a little something special for the 2022 NFL draft and get ready for that. So we'll have to talk about it. We'll let you know. We'll keep you posted. Skol Purple Pod on social media if you are looking to follow us on that as well. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining me. And as always, Skol.
Skol.
We'll be right back.